Earning money on stocks is one of the most profitable ways to earn money honestly and at the same time not the hardest work. From my point of view, this is not even earnings, but a game in which the one who knows this whole kitchen, in and out, wins. I have not written articles about how to earn money on stocks before. And not because I did not know how to do it, but because I myself did not earn money very actively in this way and therefore could not tell you about this type of earnings, as they say, from the first person. The internet is full of materials on this topic, but what can you find in them? Trivial things that even children know about, and useless quotes from all sorts of Warren Buffetts and other investors who themselves earn money in one way, and tell the crowd all sorts of fairy tales. This is not information, this is informational slag. In this article, I will tell you how people actually earn money on stocks and how I did and do it myself. So you will get a lot of benefit from this article if you read it carefully and slowly to the end. I remember when they explained to me on their fingers and showed me with examples what the point of making money on shares was. I was amazed at how elementary this whole thing was. I was also amazed at how they were confusing those people who consider buying and selling shares on the stock market to be investing, in the full sense of the word. Therefore, at first you must clearly understand one very important thing, friends. Making money on shares is not investing, as many people are accustomed to thinking. It is a game, or to be more precise, speculation. Why? Because the share price has long ceased to reflect the real state of affairs in a particular company issuing them. Of course, there is a partial link between the price of a company's shares and what is happening in it. You cannot sell shares of a non-existent or bankrupt company for a long time, although this does happen. But in general, the value of shares is determined not by how a particular company is actually doing, but by whether there is demand for these shares or not. The modern stock market is a pyramid, where the rise and fall of prices for certain stocks is determined by the demand for these stocks from the so-called investors, who either buy or sell them. And money is made in this market by buying stocks at one price and then reselling these stocks at another, higher or lower price. You can also make money on falling stock prices. In short, shares today are just an additional instrument for speculation. People simply speculate with shares on the stock exchange, like potatoes on the market. But income from shares in the form of dividends, as it used to be, has long been gone. Or rather, the dividends themselves, of course, exist, but they are not money, but shameful pennies, which, in addition, are not paid by all companies and not always. So, I repeat, the stock market, that is, the securities market, is a pyramid. It is the same pyramid as Forex. And what does a pyramid mean? It means that as long as there are people with money in this type of activity, in this game, who will buy and sell shares, it will work. This market, this game, will bring profit to some people, and losses to others, because the price of shares is constantly changing, and you never know whether it is profitable to buy shares of a particular company at the moment or not. If you buy several shares at a price of, say, 100 rubles per share, and then their price falls to 20 rubles per share, you will lose 80 rubles on each share. If the price of these shares rises to 150 rubles, you will earn 50 rubles on each share. And the price of shares can only rise if they are bought, that is, if investors, players, invest their money in them. And the demand for shares is determined by. And this will be written below. So, friends, it does not matter what shares you have on hand. What is important is whether there will be demand for them on the stock market or not. If there is demand, then your shares, your securities will rise in price, and therefore, you can resell them for more and make money on the difference in price. If there is no demand, then the price of shares will fall or remain at the same level. It is clear that shares of large, well-known companies are more stable, in the sense that they will not disappear along with the company. And if we are talking about a high-quality and promising company that is unlikely to go bankrupt in the coming years, then we can assume that as it grows, this company will attract an increasing number of investors who will buy its shares, and then their price will grow. So in this sense, you certainly need to look closely at the company whose shares you are buying, but keep in mind that the price of shares does not reflect the real state of affairs in the economy, but the demand for them. A company can grow and develop, and its shares can become cheaper because there will be no demand for them, and vice versa. This is normal practice these days. And don't count on dividends. I repeat, nobody buys shares for this purpose anymore. You can't earn a damn thing on dividends. Dividends don't bring any tangible profit, unless you buy shares for, like, $5 billion, like Warren Buffett, whom I already mentioned, did, who, if I'm not mistaken, earns about $16 a second on dividends. But I don't think you have enough money to buy a bunch of shares and sit on dividends peacefully. Besides, not all companies pay these dividends. And those that do, pay little. It's easier to take the money to the bank or increase it yourself in more profitable and faster ways. You can look up on the internet what dividends companies pay to shareholders to see for yourself that this is ridiculous money, and that it is not worth buying shares for them. But if you speculate in stocks, then yes, you can make a very good profit from this business. As for the knowledge necessary to make money on stocks, of course you need it, and you will get it to a large extent in this article. But I still recommend that you study this topic more thoroughly, including with the help of future articles dedicated to making money on stocks on this site, before you start speculating on them. After all, in this game there will always be winners and losers, and in order not to be among the losers, that is, among those beginners who in most cases lose their money on the stock market, you will need to get into it thoroughly. Most articles on the internet that tell you how to make money on stocks are, as I have already said, absolute nonsense. They are written by people who have never made money this way. For example, you can read such advice. Properly analyze the company's activities before buying its shares. Or, they also recommend buying shares of large companies at a time when they are experiencing certain temporary difficulties. Supposedly, this is the best time to buy shares at a lower price. And my friends, some smart guys advise newbie investors to delve into the type of activity that the company whose shares they want to buy is engaged in. That is, we are talking not only about the company itself, which you supposedly should study very carefully, but also about the entire market segment, which you should also understand well. This is complete nonsense, which is used to brainwash newbies, since you do not need to study any companies, much less market segments, because the price of shares of a particular company does not reflect the real state of affairs in it. This price is only partially related to the success of the company and the state of affairs in the economy, as well as in a specific market segment. The price of shares is significantly tied to the information that investors receive from various information sources, including reputable investors, one of whom I named above. And only then these investors raise or lower the price of shares of a particular company with their actions. That is, they influence their value with their demand for certain shares. So it is information that determines the price of shares, and it can be anything. You can lie about the real state of affairs in a particular company. You can lie about the oil reserves in the USA, and you can lie about the fact that a particular bank might go bankrupt. But why, you ask, lie about this? To encourage investors to buy certain shares, including illiquid ones, that is, to make a decision to part with their money. All this stock trading is a complete lie. No one will ever be honest in this business. People make huge amounts of money on the stock market by lying. But if you can't lie, then, friends, it's better for you to make money at a factory, not on the stock market. So all these investors, as they call themselves, are constantly manipulated with the help of information, and their actions provoke the growth or decrease in the value of various shares. People can invest their money in any shares, if they are convinced that these shares have the prospect of further growth. You can even buy shares of a non-existent company, which may exist only on paper, and then resell these shares to other investors, players, at a higher price, if they, believing in the value of these shares, buy them from you. Well, about non-existent companies, of course, I said it loudly, companies can exist, it's just that the price of their shares is determined not by how they are doing, but by what information about them players on the stock exchange receive. It may happen that the shares of a company that owns property in the form of a modest-sized room, a few dozen shares and computers, can grow if investors are told that this is a promising company. And at the same time, shares of some large enterprise that actually produces something and costs 1,000 times more than all sorts of small companies can fall, because investors may doubt the prospects of this enterprise. Shares are a thing in themselves, they are worth as much as investors are willing to pay for them. This is very important to understand, so as not to waste your time and your intellect on a useless analysis of the real state of affairs in this or that company whose shares you are going to buy. To make money on stocks, friends, firstly, you need to monitor what information about a particular company is being distributed through various sources of information, including from reputable investors who set the weather on the stock market, and be able to react to this information quickly. And secondly, you need to understand human psychology, because the price of stocks depends on the behavior of investors. If a herd of investors breaks to the left, you should already be there. If it breaks to the right, you should be there. Slow investors rarely make good money on stocks, they lose them more often, but sharp investors are the only ones who make money on the stock exchange. They do not mainly follow the companies, but the information that is distributed by large investors, who in turn set the movement on the market. Well, just think about how many small investors will behave if some reputable investor tells the whole world that oil will soon rise in price, or gold, or the shares of some large company. They will start buying up these shares, focusing on this authoritative baboon, and thus will really provoke their growth. And then they will also idolize this great seer, who turned out to be right in his predictions. And the information can be any friends, on the same box. They can tell you anything, on all these business channels. Just keep up with hanging up the bugs. So when, for example, they talk about an increase or decrease in oil production, about the financial statements of this or that company and other things, can you check this information? Can you check the financial statements, say, of the same Gazprom, or Microsoft? If you buy first-tier shares, the so-called blue chips, will you check the accuracy of the information about oil production, about its reserves in the USA, or will you personally check the financial statements of a large bank? Come on, no one will give you reliable information about such things, and through all these information leaks, those who need to manipulate the behavior of players on the stock exchange, who either buy shares of this or that company, or sell them. Supply and demand is what determines the price of shares, and it depends, as I have already said, on the information that players receive and to which they react in a predictable way. Something that is not in demand will never be expensive, unless this or that company decides to pay very solid dividends on its shares. But they do not do this. Their dividends are crumbs, not worth our attention. Therefore, it is information that decides everything. It decides what people, investors, will invest their money in. Well, of course, the capabilities of investors are also of great importance, because sometimes, imagine, they run out of money, so the pyramid called the securities market can deflate and the value of shares of many companies will begin to decline. No money, no demand, and no demand, no price growth. Friends, I'm going to tell you something now, but shush. It's like a secret, although not a big one. Buying shares of large companies, quality companies that will live and prosper for a long time, is most profitable during a crisis, because at that time the price of these shares falls. It's good to fish in troubled waters. After all, these pathetic little people, the so-called investors, are panicking, fussing, afraid of being left without money and therefore selling off shares. Because of this, their price falls, and they can be bought profitably. Then, when the investors' knees stop shaking, and the crisis is replaced by economic growth, they will again start buying shares of good, quality, large companies that will not go anywhere. Most of them will continue to work as they did. Well, where will Gazprom or Sberbank go? Think for yourself. So the demand for shares of large companies from investors who have recovered from the shock of the crisis will provoke an increase in their price, and you will be able to sell your shares at a higher price and get a solid profit. First, you buy cheap, and then sell expensive. It's simple. But this is simple in theory. In practice, it can be quite difficult to maneuver between negative and positive information. This requires not only knowledge, but also experience. You need to be able to predict the behavior of the crowd, that is, the majority of investors reacting to this or that information, and be able to adapt to this behavior. But if you learn this skill, that is, learn to make money on the mood of investors, you will always have enough of this money. After all, there is always money on the stock market. Those who want to earn a lot and quickly, without doing anything, will not allow the people's path to it to overgrow. But crises do not happen often, but we receive negative and positive news every day, and it is this news that investors are guided by when deciding which shares to buy and which to sell. Well, this is actually the main secret of making money on stocks, and those who know how to use it correctly make good money, and those who do not, lose money. Information is what is important, or rather, the reaction to it from the players, or, if you like, investors. Today you need to buy what people want to buy tomorrow. This could be stocks of various companies, or anything at all. People once drank tap water, and today they buy it for money, and they buy the same tap water, only filtered. If you had invested in this business yesterday, you would have cashed in on it today. With stocks, it's the same old story. You never know exactly when and which of them will grow and which will fall in price. It is impossible to predict the dynamics of the stock market. One of the most authoritative experts in the stock market, Peter Lynch, wrote about this in one of his books. I recommend that you study his books before you start playing on the stock market. Talking about how to make money on shares, I cannot help but touch on the topic of insider information, which allows some investors. An insider is someone who has access to confidential information about a particular company, due to their official or family status, to always make a good profit on the stock market. But I will not write much about insider information, because the use of this information is illegal in most countries with developed markets, which includes Russia. In addition, this topic needs to be dedicated to a separate article, which I will do in the future, because many points in it require careful explanation and understanding. You just need to understand that what is illegal for some is available and permitted to others. So, huge amounts of money are made on insider information, and not only on the securities market. Thus, people who know how to make good money on the stock exchange cannot guarantee themselves a constant income, because those investors who receive insider information will always have an advantage over them. But that's normal, it happens in any game. The one who creates the game itself and makes up the rules for it, breaks these rules himself. Those cunning speculators who invented the stock market and brought it to mind, adjusting this market to their interests, of course, will enjoy special privileges, earning, or rather, sucking money out of it in large quantities. I am telling you all this so that you understand that you will not constantly win on the stock market, no matter how hard you try, so be prepared for losses. Well, and finally, as I promised, I will tell you how I make money on shares. To be honest, friends, I do not speculate in shares myself, because I do not like this type of activity. I cannot do something just for the sake of money. I am a creative person. I need to create, and not engage in some kind of trade. Therefore, I entrusted this matter to a good manager, a reliable and experienced person in this matter, who, in fact, told me in detail the meaning of making money on shares, which I, in turn, shared with you in this article. That is, I found a reliable person and at the same time a good player who buys and sells shares on the stock market with my and his money, making money for both of us. So if you yourself do not want to mess around with all these shares, look for a reliable manager who can be trusted, so that he speculates shares on the securities market for you. I came across such a person through my friends. Perhaps among your friends or among your friends' friends there are people playing on the stock market. These are the people whose honesty you can be absolutely sure of, and you should contact them, and trust them with your money. But do not contact various investment funds that drain their clients' money, because they can simply screw you. In any case, this is exactly what happened to me and to many other investors I know. We were screwed by investment funds, who simply stole, I believe, our money, and did not lose it on the stock exchange. So either trade shares on the stock exchange yourself, or entrust this matter to a reliable person who will be responsible to you for every penny you spend. If you still want to entrust your money to some investment fund, then you must definitely find those people who have already done this and make sure that the investment fund you choose will not intentionally drain your money. Be careful with this. You can't trust anyone these days, especially those who are so eager to manage our money.